A payment could be agreed, the obligation recognized, and the settlement accepted in principle, yet the exchange could still fail under its own weight. In early Greece, value was sometimes carried in long iron spits, known as obeloi. They could be counted, bundled, and transferred. They were durable, recognizable, and costly to produce, but their form imposed a burden. The same object that made value visible also made value difficult to move. It could support payment. It could also obstruct it. That contradiction defines iron spits. Before coins, before banks, belief ruled the world. Before stamped silver became common, Greek exchange used livestock, grain, metal by weight, gifts, obligations, and useful objects. Iron spits occupied an uncertain place within this environment. They were roasting tools used where sacrifice and communal feasting joined food, authority, and obligation. But some were deposited in groups, suggesting significance beyond ordinary use. Later Greek vocabulary retained a connection between these objects and money. The small silver obol was linked to the word for a spit. A drachma was understood as a grasp or handful, traditionally 6 spits held together. The language suggests a passage from counted objects toward abstract units. Yet language alone does not prove everyday market circulation. Spits found in graves and sanctuaries may indicate dedication, status, feasting, or ritual use as easily as payment. The evidence remains incomplete. An object does not become money because it is exchanged once. It becomes money when people expect others to accept it again. Utility alone could not give an iron spit monetary force. Its value depended on shared recognition of its material, form, labor, and setting. It only worked while those conditions remained intact. Iron offered real advantages. It was durable, countable, and difficult to produce without ore, fuel, tools, and skill. It did not rot or require feeding. Unlike an informal promise, it could pass between people who shared no memory of an earlier obligation. But every advantage introduced a burden. A spit long enough for a fire made even a modest bundle awkward to transport. Larger payments multiplied the weight. Storage required space. Inspection took time. The material reduced dependence on memory, but increased dependence on labor and recognition. For a household trying to settle an obligation, this mattered immediately. The debt did not disappear because the iron was difficult to move. Someone still had to gather, carry, and present the objects in a form the receiver would accept. If a bundle was incomplete, irregular, damaged, or rejected, the obligation remained. Time did not reset the exchange. The burden stayed with the person required to deliver value. Here the system became clearer and more constrained. Iron spits allowed value to move beyond direct barter, but every transfer required judgment. They reduced the need to remember who had given what, while creating a new need to evaluate each object. The obligation could be transferred. Verification could not be avoided. Their physical form may also have limited accumulation. Precious metals can compress value into a small space. Iron spits did the opposite. They kept value extended, visible, and demanding. Whether communities intended this effect cannot be proven. The evidence does not support a single policy governing all such objects. But wherever spits functioned monetarily, their form restricted what wealth could easily become. The limitation worked in 2 directions. A medium difficult to hoard was also difficult to use in large exchange. What restrained concentration also slowed circulation. What made wealth visible also made payment cumbersome. The system shaped possession by shaping movement. Sanctuaries may have strengthened local recognition. They gathered offerings, distributed sacrificial meat, and preserved dedications. Their value, obligation, and authority were publicly observed. It might be equipment, dedicated wealth, or an object recognized by custom. But local recognition did not guarantee wider acceptance. An object accepted in one city might carry less force elsewhere. No stamped authority declared an exact value, and two similar spits did not necessarily contain identical amounts of iron or labor. Counting reduced uncertainty, but did not remove evaluation. Beyond a familiar setting, the burden returned. Distance exposed the final limit. Local users could rely on shared custom. Larger networks required strangers to agree. A trader needed value that survived movement without prolonged inspection. Iron spits could cross the distance physically, but their acceptance might not cross with them. Later, writers remembered iron money because its inconvenience contrasted with silver and gold. Some accounts associated restrictive iron currency with opposition to luxury. But those traditions were written later and cannot safely explain every earlier spit. The evidence instead suggests objects carrying practical, ritual, symbolic, and perhaps monetary meanings together. What remains clear is the structural principle. Monetary behavior can be limited through material form as well as law. When value is bulky, difficult to hide, costly to transport, and slow to accumulate, concentration becomes harder. But the same conditions also make settlement more burdensome and distance harder to overcome. The restraint is not separate from the object, it is built into the conditions of using it. That made iron spits functional, but only within limits. They could be counted, recognized, and carried beyond personal memory. Yet they remained heavy, uneven, locally dependent, and difficult to scale. Each advantage created a corresponding burden. Iron spits reveal an early boundary in monetary development. Value had become transferable and partly independent of personal obligation. But it had not yet become light, precisely standardized, or widely credible. The system held as long as material presence and shared custom supported trust. It began to strain when exchange demanded speed, distance, and scale. In the next episode, we will examine how bronze tools became units of value. Through objects whose practical utility could support exchange beyond a single transaction.